Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going on with our Bible study, the end time prophecy of the book of Revelation. We're going to be at chapter 8 today. I want to thank you so much for taking your time to join me for these videos. And if you would consider, hit subscribe. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Please be sure to comment. The reason I'm asking for these things is it really helps the channel out. I'd be appreciative to you if you give me a little bit of help with that. And please be sure to comment if you feel so led. I'd love to hear from you. At the end of the video will be my email address. It's all lowercase. Be sure to send me your prayer request. It'd be my great honor to pray for you. All right, let's get into chapter 8 today. We begin at verse 1 and we read, "And when he had opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour." Verse 2, "And I saw the seven angels which stood before God, and to them were given seven trumpets." So, chapter 8 begins where chapter 6 left off. The seventh seal contains the seven trumpets. Now, the silence of about half an hour, that indicates the beginning of a further series of judgments, okay? So let's go on at verse 3 and we'll look a little bit more at this. Verse 3, "And another angel came and stood at the altar, having a golden censer, and there was given unto him much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne." Verse 4, "And the smoke of the incense which came with the prayers of the saints ascended up before God out of the angel's hand." Verse 5, "And the angel took the censer and filled it with fire of the altar." Now listen at this, "and cast it into the earth. And there were voices and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake." Verse 6, "And the seven angels which had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound." Now, incense is often an illustration of prayer. And we saw that, if you think back, we saw that back in chapter 5, and it was verse 8 that we looked at that and talked a little bit about it. The trumpet judgments are God's response to the prayers of the saints that we looked at back in chapter 6, verse 10. Which was, if you remember, a cry for revenge against the enemies of Christ. The throwing of the censer to the earth represents the coming judgment of the earth. Now, Christ will use angels to administer the trumpets. The blast of each trumpet symbolizes the execution of God's judgment. Now, in verse 7, we read, "The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood, and they were cast upon the earth, and the third of the trees was burnt up, and all green grass was burnt up." So, the first trumpet brings literal fire and hail and causes the destruction of most of the vegetation on the earth. Now, famine and a lack of oxygen production will result from this judgment. Now, going on at verse 8, we read, "And the second angel sounded, and as it were a great mountain burning with fire, was cast into the sea, and the third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed." So the second trumpet turns a third of the sea, largest body of water on the earth, into blood. And a third of the sea creatures, because of this judgment, and ships are destroyed. Now, this judgment will produce a reduction of evaporation. Why is that important? Because that's going to cause a shortage of rain and fresh water on land. It's also going to affect international commerce and distribution of food and resources that will be severely hampered by this. Now we see beginning in verse 10, and the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. Verse 11, and the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. So, the third trumpet makes a third of all fresh water become bitter, and it results in widespread thirst and death. Now in Greek, the word for wormwood is absinthos. I may be incorrectly pronouncing that, and literally means undrinkable. Now wormwood was a bitter herb that would make the water of earth unfit for human consumption. So that's why that's important there in this series of verses. All right, in verse 12, and the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, and the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars, so as the third part of them was darkened, and the day shone not for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So the fourth trumpet takes away from the earth a third of the light from the heavens during both day and night. Now the light arriving from the sun and the stars and the moon is reduced, which that would lead to fear, and it would also lead to lack of crop production. And you might say a much lower quality of life. All right, verse 13, and I beheld and heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels, which are yet to sound. So, the last three trumpets will be especially severe judgments, as announced by the threefold proclamation of woe, woe, woe. They will be directed toward the inhabitants of the earth. That means the unbelievers that are still alive at this point on earth. But the oldest and the majority of Greek manuscripts read eagle there instead of angel in the first part of this verse. All right, we're going to end here for this week. Next week, we will continue on with chapter 9. Again, I thank you so much for taking your time to join me for these Bible studies here. I appreciate you so much. Without you guys, I couldn't do this. And so I'm grateful to you. Thank you so much. I pray that you have a blessed weekend. And if you need prayers, remember, the end of this address, all lowercase, will be video. I'm sorry. I said address. I can't talk today. Will be my email address. And remember, it's all lowercase. Send me your emails with your prayers. I'll be happy to pray for you. It'd be my great honor. Thank you so much again. You take care. Blessings to you. Hope to see you in the next video.